We are 10 days away from UCF football taking the field, but who's going to come out at the two deep on offense?
You are Locked On UCF, your daily podcast on the UCF Knights, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome on into the Locked On UCF, your daily UCF podcast. I'm your host, Mike G, and thank you so much for making us your first listen of every single day. Turn us up, turn us on, turn it out. I'm here with my good friend Andrew Glucov to talk a little UCF football. On today's show, we're going to talk about the offensive battles that are raging here. In the second half of the show, we're going to get into the offensive depth chart and do they have the right guy at QB? The question everybody wants answered. Andrew, let's start at the top here. Scott Frost has done a good job, in my opinion, creating competition during the spring and headed into the fall, especially on offense here. Guys are competing at a high level. Talk to me about the competition, man. I think it's so good for a football team to have guys actually battle it out. You know, he said we're not going to anoint anybody at QB. Somebody's got to take it. It looks like Cam Fancher may be rising to the top of the pack. We'll talk about that in our depth chart projections. But competition, man, everybody wins when you compete internally.
Well, you know, you have a new staff, a new team with basically an entire brand new roster. You're going to have open competitions because you don't know what you got. You know, part of that is the coaching staff being able to evaluate what they have. And the other is the players have an opportunity to showcase how they've grown over the years, at another school or at UCF. Either way, you can't go in with a preconceived notion because you got nothing to fall back on. You talk quarterbacks. Well, two of the three main guys, vying for number one weren't on the team last year. So you can't go in with with a bias towards an incumbent because there is no incumbent. Dylan Risk was your closest thing and he's gone. KJ Jefferson was the starter last year. He's gone, when the season started. So there's RJ Harvey, he's gone. Kobe Hudson, he's gone. So all your top guys have moved on. And now it's time to, you have to hit the reset button and you have to reanalyze, okay, what did guys do last year? How are they positioned to either be successful or not? What are their real skill sets? How can we put them in a position to be successful? And where do they best fit? Because sometimes the best fit, especially with like a rotational guy, like a defensive lineman or a running back, the best fit may not be the first guy on the field. It may be part of the rotation. So you have to see where a guy fits best, not just on the talent, level, but on a playbook level.
Yeah, you do. Fit is important, and I think that is something that when Scott Frost took this job, he understood, look, man, I've got to find guys that fit what I want to do as a coach. Now, you and I have talked about what he wants to do, but remind our listeners, man, what does a Scott Frost offense look like ideally if he has all the ideal talent to run his system?
Well, it's about tempo, and when the, first, second down, the clock is running, you run the ball, you had a short completion. They're going to run up to the line. They're going to move quick, expect the snap with 24 seconds left in the play clock. They're not going to, rotate any players out. They're going to use the advantage to win, the defenders, and then use that fatigue, go over the top. So it's a spread offense. It's a variation of Chip Kelly's, offense that he ran when Scott Frost was an offensive coordinator at Oregon, and it can work if you have the right talent. You need receivers that can run over the, can make that double move and stretch the field. You need a quarterback that can move, that can push that ball downfield accurately. You need, a quarterback who's willing to tuck the ball and run because, if those opportunities aren't there, you may have to. You need a tight end that can really do it all. You need the blocking aspect. You need, that extra receiver. And you need an offensive lineman, core that can handle the cardio stress of running to the line, snapping the ball, having enough, conditioning to maintain focus so that they don't lose the cadence on the next play. Now, when the clock stops, obviously you take advantage, you move guys around. There's going to be rotations, but a Scott Frost offense is about, speed and accuracy. It's not as fast as a Josh Heupel offense, but I think it's a little less prone to mistakes as a result by being just a little slow.
When he got hired, he described the process of learning this offense like learning a new language and the players becoming fluent in this new language. How fluent will they look when they take the field on Thursday, August 28th? We get a little Thursday night football action for UCF. That will be the question, but we can't wait to see it. Look, let's just get to what everybody wants to know. Who is going out there first when they take the field? We'll talk about that next on Locked On UCF. This episode of Locked On UCF is brought to you by our friends at Drip Drop. If you're trying to stay on top of your routine, whether that's workouts, long days on campus, or staying focused through back-to-back classes, hydration is where it all starts. And that's where Drip Drop comes in. When I'm on top of my hydration, I notice everything works better. My energy, my mood, my focus, even my skin. But getting enough fluids every day isn't always easy. That's why I've been loving Drip Drop. Drip Drop is doctor developed and scientifically proven for fast hydration. It uses perfect balance of sodium, electrolytes, and glucose to help your body absorb fluids quickly, delivering 3x the electrolytes and half the sugar of a leading sports drink. Right now, Drip Drop is offering Locked On listeners 20% off your first order. Just head to dripdrop.com and use promo code LOCKEDONCollege. That's dripdrop.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. You guys hear that? Drip Drop. That was I threw in the drip drop at the end. That was my own lame little addition to the ad read there. Let's talk about the projected offensive depth chart here. This is part of our journalist spotlight. Our guy Steven Leonard hooked us up with this. Please go subscribe to his Substack at stevenleonard27.substack.com. That's Steven Leonard, STEPHENLEONARD 27.substack.com. This is his projected too deep, and we're going to start at the top. Something we reported on, but Steven thinks the same thing. They say great minds think alike. Cam Fancher projected to be the first QB to roll out onto the field. And then behind him, there's a battle for QB2 going on between our guys, Taven Jackson here, the transfer, and Jakuri Brown, the incumbent, a guy who struggled to throw the ball at the end of last season. He inevitably got benched for Dylan Risks, but seems to have grown under Scott Frost and McKenzie. Milton. Let's spend some time here. Cam Fancher, you and I really thought Taven Jackson would take this job by the horns during the spring. But to the extent that everybody wrote off Cam Fancher, it seems like he wasn't ready to be written off, and he wants QB1 just as bad as the rest.
Well, I think it was more the fact they didn't want Cam Fancher to be the guy. It was a case of, had a rough year last year. Just stats have never really jumped out, even on a half-decent Marshall team, just never really jumped out. But he's, consistent, and he's got that experience, and he's, he has no problem tucking the ball and running when he needs to, more so than Taven Jackson, which fits, that Scott Frost mold. But obviously he's a bridge quarterback. You got, the hope is by next year you have, someone stepping up, either a talented new freshman or one of these holdovers between Jackson and Brown can really embrace being the possible QB1 for their final season if they stick around, or it's someone else in the portal. But either way, this is a bridge group, just trying to get to the next generation. These were not the guys that Frost recruited. It's just you're pulling guys from the portal. It's who's available. So then, he's making best do. And, considering the potential struggles, we don't know if it'll explode or really fall flat in his face, but the potential struggles of the offense with, an offensive line that's still kind of gelling, and, a lot of question marks at the wide receiver position and the quarterback position. They're looking like, well, he kind of, more closely checks all the boxes than these other guys who is either more of a pocket passer versus more of a runner. But we heard about it, all through spring and everything, where they was just tight to the vest. Oh, if you have, I don't agree that if you have two quarterbacks, you have none. No. If you have two quarterbacks, you have none. And this would be a great example if they decide to carry this competition all the way into the regular season. I think we're going to see the struggles that come with a two quarterback system. So hopefully something plays out and QB1 gets locked in place.
Well, it should be noted that Stephen Leonard noted that while he's projecting Cam at QB1, this may be a battle that rages on into the first couple games of the season. So Cam's going to have to play well to hold on to it. But Scott Frost not going to be scared to change it up if need be. So let's move on to running back. A guy that we talked about a lot, Miles Montgomery, the incumbent, projected at RB1, but also it's an and/or situation. He's battling out with a guy that we've talked about a lot, Jaden Nixon. Jaden Nixon has been performing well since he got there, and quite frankly, I wouldn't be surprised to see an even load between these two. But Jaden Nixon jumping in there at RB2. We've got Tavion Swint and Stacey Gage battling it out for RB2. Talk to me about running back, man. Obviously, Miles Montgomery he's going to be a leader on this team. Regardless, he's going to be one of Scott's foundational, again, we've talked about this term, one of his culture keepers, Miles Montgomery. But Jaden Nixon could be the best guy in the room. Either way, I think UCF's in a pretty good position with these two guys. You got two guys that can tote the rock. Maybe one can be a little bit of a change of pace. What do you think about running back here?
Well, this is the best position group on offense, easily. You've got two starter quality guys and Miles Montgomery and Jaden Nixon. It's and/or on RB1. The truth is, it doesn't matter. Both these guys can get a lot of carries. It doesn't matter who actually walks on the field first as far on offense. I wouldn't be surprised if Montgomery gets the nod a little bit more because Jaden Nixon is likely to be a return guy. It's something that he did, during his time at Oklahoma State in the MAC. So it would not surprise me at all that Montgomery, might play first snap, but that doesn't mean he's going to have more carries. It's going to be more situational. But these are two really talented guys. I'm more of a Jaden Nixon guy as far as, who will end up with more carries. I think Miles Montgomery plays the change of pace back really, really well. And again, it goes back to what we were saying before about sometimes it's about best fit, not best athlete. And I think Montgomery fits better as a change of pace guy than Nixon did. Nixon was the second running back behind Ollie Gordon back in 23. Gordon obviously, much like RJ Harvey, carried heavily the lion's share of everything. But I think because of what we saw last year for Nixon, we know he can play the number one guy. Montgomery's always played the number two. And I think he fits that role really, really well. And it's not meant to be an insult or dig on him. It just, sometimes you have a good niche. And I think ultimately he'll end up second in carries, but I think that's a good thing.
Great stuff there on running back. Let's move through here. At tight end, projected at tight end 1 is our guy, someone we talked about a lot, Kylan Fox, tight end 1. Behind him, Dylan Wade. Now, Stephen noted an and/or here at tight end 2 with Max Drag. I don't have a graphic for him, but Max Drag will be waiting in the wings at tight end 2 here. But talk to me about Kylan Fox. We've talked about him on our show before. This is a guy that they like a lot and could contribute. Sometimes when all else fails, you get in 12 personnel and you try to make things work. And the tight ends become very, very important there because you're going to have 2 of them on the field here. I don't know how much 12 personnel I expect them to run, but I know that Scott Frost has that in his bag.
He does. And early on, I thought Dylan Way was going to be the guy. Coming, had experience, was the guy, I believe, at Maryland. Everything kind of looked at, but Kyle Fox has had an outstanding camp. I mean, he has done it all and has really proved that he's ready to step up. He's trying to be a leader on this offense that's really looking for, an identity. They're trying to figure out, who are we? So I think Fox has done everything possible to rise up and lead this position group. I think, Stephen kind of nailed this one in his article. If you're not a subscriber, please become a subscriber, help him out, check it out. You won't be disappointed. But I think him being as TE1 makes a lot of sense considering how strong of a fall camp that he's had. And he's, again, between, the springtime into fall, he's done everything the right way. He's made a lot of highlight plays. He's blocking. He's doing what a tight end needs to do, which is make your quarterback look better. And and I think Wade will still get a lot of playing time as the second tight end. That jumbo package, I expect that to be running, goal line situations. You got to use it.
Yeah. Look, man, tight end's not a sexy position all the time, but certainly important there. Those are the guys they've got coming up there. Let's jump on over from tight end, my friend, to wide receiver. This is going to be one of the more intriguing rooms. Scott Frost he's downright giddy about his wide receiver room when you listen to him in the media. Let's see who we got here at wide receiver. At wide receiver X1, Stephen is projecting DJ Black. Also, right behind him at X1, this is, again, an and/or situation, Chris Domerkant. A lot of transfers in this room. At Y1, we've got Marcus Burke. This is a guy that you've talked about. I think this is a Florida transfer, right? And then you've got Wade and Charles as well. Moving along to the slot, we round out with Dwayne Thomas Jr. at the slot 1, slot 2, Jordan Bridgewater. Talk to me, man, about wide receiver. Scott Frost cannot stop talking about this wide receiver room. He likes this. He thinks this is a position group that has a chance to make a real impact this year. And, whenever a coach is this open about his praise for a position group, always my antenna goes up, because they tend to be a little bit more conservative when doling out praise in the offseason.
Well, I mean, the same thing he said about the quarterbacks. He's raving about these three are all doing great. No one's setting themselves apart. This is a very unproven class of wide receivers. It doesn't mean they're bad. They're just not proven. They're just not a lot of stats between them. Going in, I had Black and Burke circled as my top guys. They showed the most in prior years. I figured that talent would carry over. But Chris Domerkant has really done a great job this fall of really making a case for playing time, and that's why he's very firmly in the hunt here. I don't know if he'll get all the way to top billing, but he's definitely earned himself some playing time, doing a lot of the right things. But I think I'm still in the camp of DJ Black and Marcus Burke. I think Burke, he got a lot of playing time. Even if he didn't see the ball all that much, he's still, he's on the field. You block. Remember, no block, no rock. Wide receivers have to really do a good job of blocking, especially while this offensive line is still kind of figuring themselves out. And I think Dwayne Thomas also is the perfect guy for that slot receiver. You match him up with a Kylan Fox, and you got four really, potentially explosive, guys catching the ball. But again, you've got 1A, 1B, but I'm still in the Black and Burke department.
All right.
I like that name. Give a little Black and Burke going on.
That sounds like a pretty good law firm there. If you get in an accident, call Black and Burke. The kind of moving down the list here. Again, those are your wide receivers. Offensive line. This the big uglies, man, down there. They're going to be super important, especially to the QB, who we're going to talk about again here in a second. But starting at left tackle, Steven is projecting Paul Rubelt. This is a guy you've talked about quite a bit. At left guard, we have guard Memoir. Did I say that right? I do not want to butcher this.
I'm from Ohio. I mispronounce everything.
Okay, all right. Correct me in the comments here. And then moving on to center, we've got Carter Miller. And then at right tackle, he's projecting Preston Cushman. Last but certainly not least, right guard Keegan Smith. That is your offensive line here. Paul Rubelt's name stands out to me. What do you like about this offensive line?
Well, Paul Rubelt's one of those rarities, built from UCF, started, his time there as a true freshman, worked his all the way up. He's been there a long time. And so, 6'10", big boy. I mean, he struggled for a time to learn how to work that size into his center of gravity. He's kind of started to figure it out. And as a result, the height is not being used against him. He's starting to use it as a weapon. So I think him as being the blind side tackle is the perfect spot. He's the most consistent lineman on this team. You go down the line, guard Memoir, and I if I mispronounce it, I apologize because, well, not really my specialty, but one of multiple transfers on this team. That was an area where UCF had to really clean house a little bit. A lot of guys left one way or the other, and so he found a lot of opportunity to come in and grow. My favorite guy on this is Carter Miller. I thought he was an excellent pickup, redshirt junior. So he actually, unlike a lot of these other guys on there, he's got a shelf life left. He's got another year to play. Has risen to the top as center, and I'm biased. I played center when I was younger. There's a lot of value in that position, and so I'm really excited to see him play. And then the right side of the line is a little more up in the air as far as who's going. Right guard has definitely been kind of hotly contested. Keegan Smith, he's a redshirt senior, another guy just on his last year getting the opportunity. There's going to be rotation, so I don't know if this position is fully settled. I can see this one still being up in the air, and then Preston Cushman, another transfer, but a junior on the right tackle, opportunity to maybe get a 2-year guy out of that. I think it's important that while there's a degree of rotation in the offensive line, when you have chances, you move guys around, because it's especially in a tempo offense, these guys are going to get worked as far as cardio wise. But to get players that have at least one more season left in them of eligibility, there is value of getting them in there and getting them exposure to the Scott Frost offense, because the expectation is they're going to be there next year in 2026. And you want those guys to be the anchors of the line. So the fact that you got at least 2 linemen on that starting, projected starting lineup that have an extra year of eligibility carries a lot of value in a position group that really has few non-seniors on the squad.
Look, offensive line will make the QB's life either easier or a lot harder this season. Looking forward to seeing how they play. That's your 2 deep there. We're going to run through it one more time before we move on. Cam Fancher, the projected QB1 at QB2, Taven Jackson and or Jakuri Brown. We'll see how that works. They're going to continue to battle it out, I think, into game 2. Then you've got Miles Montgomery and Jaden Nixon trading there at RB1, followed by Tavion Swint and Stacey Gage at RB2. At tight end, we've got Kylan Fox and Dylan Wade there. Those guys are going to play an important role. And then at wide receiver, Scott Frost's favorite positioning group, DJ Black is and you know what? DJ Black and Chris Domerkamp, both great names, by the way. I don't know, not be great with names like DJ Black and Chris Domerkamp. Marcus Burke, the transfer, is also in there at the Y1. We've got Waden Charles there with him. Then Dwayne Thomas Jr. And Jordan Bridgewater at the slot. So going to be interesting to see what goes on there. Paul Rubelt will be protecting the blind side of one of these quarterbacks. At center, we've got Carter Miller. At left guard, we've got guard Memilar. And then at right tackle, we've got Preston Cushman rounded out by Keegan Smith at right guard. So that is what we may see roll out on the field. But look, ultimately, everybody's going to come back to QB, and whether they get the right guy there, we're going to talk about how they figure out how to get the right guy right after a quick word from our sponsors. This episode of Locked On UCF is brought to you by our friends at Game Time. Have you ever decided at the last minute to head to a ball game with friends or family? Maybe it's game day and suddenly you realize you want to be in the stands. That's exactly where Game Time comes in. It's the easiest way to just grab last minute tickets without stress. With the money you save on tickets, you can splurge on food, drinks, merch, or even invite a bigger group to come with you. Game Time makes it possible. Game Time makes buying tickets fast and simple, guys. Prices on the app actually drop the closer you get to first pitch, and they've got incredible last-minute deals, clear seat views, and low price guarantee that takes the worry out of buying tickets. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. What time is it? Game time. How do they find out? How do they find the right guy at QB? Somebody's going to go out there first, but it might not be the guy that's out there last. And this is an experiment that, as we mentioned, may roll into week 2. There's a saying. Scott Frost said it himself: if you got 3 QBs, you don't have one. So they've got to find one, and they got to find one that can do it at a high enough level for them to get 6 games this season. Your mission has to be to get this team to a bowl game. And in today's college football, it is very, very hard to win at a high level without high-level QB play. Can they get high-level QB play out of the 3 that they have? Man, what do you think about this group so far?
It's a bridge group.
Okay, all right. Not a ton of optimism in that, but okay.
Yeah, you have to read in between the lines of what the coaches say, and Scott Frost told a lot without saying a lot. It was not a booming endorsement on these guys that it's the competition is so great I can't pick one. I don't buy that. I really don't. You play quarterback, you have a quarterback as your QB coach, you know how to evaluate. So this is a case of trying to push each other to do better because they're not doing good enough. So I'm hoping that, you hope for the best, prepare for the worst. But my hope is that the running game is able to take enough of the load that the passing game is not overly stressed to the point of having to carry the team. That also falls back on the defense. Can the defense be able to keep UCF in these games long enough so that they don't have to go pass happy? During the first part of the season, this worked. As the season got later, it didn't work as well. They would build out great leads and then things would just fall apart. Iowa State and trying to blank on some Arizona State. Yeah, had a moment there. Those were 2 very winnable games that if they had a slightly better player at a position or 2, they would have won, and they didn't. So, we saw what happened last year with the lack of a good quarterback or quarterback consistency. So, I mean, if you have a serviceable quarterback, you can make this work. You don't have RJ Harvey, but you still have a really talented group of running backs that complement each other in very different ways. You've got, more slashers with Nixon and Montgomery. You have wrecking balls in Swint and Gage. So you have options and you can throw different things. That's why I was saying RB1 doesn't really matter as much because you're going to get a lot of, playing time because there's going to be different ways to look at different situations. So I think with good playing calling and good analysis of what is being presented to the offense, what they have to work against, I think they'll find ways to get creative. Maybe not so much exactly how they want to do it, but it's how they need to do it.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun watch here. I'm excited to see the tutelage of Scott Frost and McKenzie Milton pay off for these quarterbacks. It would be fun, man. Look, if Jakuri Brown ends up playing, it would be fun for as much criticism as he took to see him come out there looking like Brett Favre, slinging the ball all over the field. I mean, can you imagine the billboard in recruiting that would be for these guys if they can develop one of these guys into a top 4 QB in the Big 12? We'll see how it goes. Either way, we'll be here to talk about it. I want to thank my friend Andrew Glucov from UCFKnightZone.com, where you can check out his written work and my written work. If you guys don't know, we have launched the UCF Knight Zone for fans to go and read more about their UCF Knights. So please head on over there, give us a click. Also, follow our friend Steven Leonard. I gave you guys his URL earlier in the show. Contributor here. We want to thank him for his contributions to today's show. Thank you for making Locked On UCF your first listen of every single day. For your next listen, go check out our friends at The Portal Show. Our guy Brian Smith has the latest in portal signings, rumors, all the going-ons in college football right there on The Portal Show. You can find them on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. You can find us here tomorrow on Locked On UCF.